Well, hi, and welcome to the Healthy Metal Hippie podcast. Today we have Dr. Rachel Knightley with us. She's an author, lecturer, and a coach, both in writing, business, and personal. Hi, Rachel. Welcome. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, really good to see you and to be here. Thank you for having me. I've been writing for as long as I can remember, and even though at the age of probably about 4, it was basically fan fiction. It was taking characters from the books I was reading and making them have little adventures, and my mum would staple them into these tiny books. It even then, it kind of had coaching in it because what really interests me as a writer is who we are, why do we do the things we do? How do we stand in our own way? How, if we recognize that, can we change how we show up in the world to be more how we want our lives to go? And so creativity as a life skill was kind of an interest even from when I was tiny. The world didn't have that vocabulary around it then. I only qualified as a coach during lockdown. And at that time, it was because I wanted to best support the writers that I was working with. Because obviously, when you're doing creative writing, you need access to all of you. Whatever goes on the page, in order for it to get on the page, you need to feel safe with yourself. Otherwise, you do what around my MA in 2007 I was still doing and people can do for life, which is trying to edit things we haven't written yet, trying to edit in our head when it has not landed on the page yet.
That is a really interesting concept, and I think that's really useful because I know personally I get all these ideas and thoughts, and I'm like, yeah, it's come together perfectly. But it hasn't manifested into anything. And so, how do we get those things out onto paper? I've been talking a little bit about fear
Mm,
and releasing that, and that fear that you have of making it into something physical and tangible,
mm.
even if you don't keep it forever. But I know for me, that's something that blocks me sometimes.
Absolutely. And you are so not alone in that. When I did my PhD, this was also during lockdown. I ended up having my Viva on my sofa because the world had kind of stopped at that point. It was all during lockdown. But one of the things that I found with my lecturers who I was working with and with the people around me was that we may word it differently, but fundamentally there are two things that scare us with creative work. One is people seeing it and not liking it, and the other is people seeing it, full stop.
Right.
And the thing is that on the other side of that fear is not only so much enjoyment, but actual growth as a writer, because feedback and audience connection, writing to be read, the confidence that you build in your life as well as in your art, it all comes together. It's all part of the same thing, that when we are able to be as specific as we can about what we want from our feedback. So when I first take work to somebody and I say specifically, I use the John Cleese rules from the book Creativity. I can get that down if you want. It's a
That's a
gorgeous
good
book.
book. Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's actually up here. I will grab it. I will grab it.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah, yeah. It's a great
we can
resource.
advertise him before we advertise me, right? So
Yes.
John Cleese Creativity, it is yay big, and if you're just listening to this, we're talking a centimeter. It's a small book, but it's got the best rules for feedback I've ever seen in my life, and it's along the lines of, for when were you bored, when could you not understand what was going on, when literally were you confused, and what was emotionally confusing. And it's not saying bad person, you should never have written, and it's not saying great, perfect, wonderful, both of which are never true and completely useless. There's always somewhere we can go. It humanizes it. It makes it part of a process. But what I do with this is I work with what writer's block really is. And the truth about writer's block is that every job, every personality has it. The reason we get a name for it is
It's
that we find the excuses to keep it. Now, what you do is you acknowledge that it's coming from a place of wanting it to go well. It's not coming from a place of having no ideas. That is never what writer's block is. I'm 42 years old. I've been making memories, imagination, observations, questions about the world for 42 years. The problem is, which road do I pick? So what I do, whether it's pick a prompt out of an envelope in a workshop, or whether it's just, right, what mood am I in, getting onto the page, the phrase in my head is always pick a lane. If you're
right.
driving, then going everywhere, oh God, panic, 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 is going to use more petrol, be far more likely to get you in an accident. But if you go, right, I'm in this lane now, and you take it mile by mile, sentence by sentence, something will come out. So every writer's gym workshop that I run, every course, we always start with a warm up, just like the physical gym. It's about thinking on the page and getting used to that.
Right. And just letting that flow happen without judgment and, but,
Exactly.
with no restrictions, no matter what it is.
I talk a lot about the difference between judgment and noticing. What quite often when we're
Okay.
invited to notice a behavior or notice a thought or notice a feeling, it immediately goes to judgment on yourself. What a terrible person that makes me, or what an idiot I am to think that, when it's obviously not true. Whereas actually, if you separate noticing from judgment, better things happen. And there's another lovely book called Bird by Bird, Anne Lamott, where she talks about the idea of bird spotting, but I talk about it in terms of feelings a lot, where if a sparrow goes past the window while you're writing, you think sparrow. You don't think anything about yourself or the sparrow. You just think sparrow. If a robin goes past, you think robin. Getting to a point where you can think, when a thought comes past, for example, so and so would hate this, or this will never be as good as so and so, or anything that comes through your head,
Yeah.
if you can write that down the way you do a bird spotting chart and tick them off when you see them, you start to realize you've seen these same thoughts at the same time every day. And by doing that, you realize, oh, I've had that before. And by doing that, it puts you more in power. So another thing that we do is something called an excuses bingo chart, where you put all the thoughts that go through your head into a noughts and crosses grid. So I have that game where you have a big noughts and crosses grid, maybe 6 by 6,
Yeah.
box is big enough to put a sentence in, and it might be, my mum would hate this, or my English teacher doesn't think we should use sentences that start with a conjunction, or am I allowed to dot dot dot, or what if I could have done it better if I did this. And you can give it the positive opposite. So, so and so, what if so and so hates it? What if someone literally has their life saved by knowing that somebody out there is feeling something that they are feeling, which is what we write and we read for. So those are games that we play.
I really love that too, because I think so much of life in general is about flipping your perspective on things,
Mm.
and and how you approach everyday situations, but especially, not maybe not especially, but definitely creative works too, where you
Mm.
have to think, like, where you sit there and you think failure, 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 but we forget that whole bigger spectrum of what if,
Mm.
that is the positive side of it,
Mm.
right?
Absolutely. And that's what the Writer's Gym is for. It's a place where you get used to your ability to think on the page, your ability to write things in the first place and get them into the world. But it's also a place where you get clearer on your objectives, so that you know what you're editing towards, you know what you're rewriting towards. And it's the emotional support as well as the technical support. Yes, I'm qualified in writing, but I'm also a business and personal coach. And that means emotionally, you're in a very, very safe place to let yourself go what if, and to let yourself lose that bit of control, so that discoveries can happen. Discoveries don't happen when your control is too tight.
Yeah, no, that is absolutely true. And I guess they say, good things never come from comfort zones, right?
Mm,
Do you want to
mm.
tell people about what the writer's gym is?
Absolutely. I'll just say on that point you just made as well, a
Mm.
meme that I shared a little while ago, that was a thought that came to me in a situation, was the edge of a comfort zone is the most exhilarating place in the world. Now, it is also the most scary, because usually when you get to the edge of a comfort zone, it's not just that you're doing something that you haven't done before, it's that you're thinking or feeling something in a different way. Rather than I can't, it becomes what if I can? And that's
Yeah,
quite a raw place to be.
it's that holy
So
shit riding on the edge, right?
absolutely. Yeah. And it applies to lots of other things too. I have dyspraxia. I do an awful lot of physiotherapy. I do things around my hypermobility. And actually, when I thought that it was something physical that had done it. But the way the writer's gym works is exactly the mentality that you bring to the physical gym, which is, for example, when you do a warm up, the purpose of a warm up is not, wow, look how beautiful that is, look how amazing. It's about getting, it's utilitarian. It's getting your mind and body to work with each other so that together they'll be able to do what you're going to ask them to do later. You don't invite the audience to a warm-up. You don't invite your reader to the warm-up. It's
Right.
just for you. It's the ability to go, we sometimes use the phrase vomit draft, which I think is a brilliant phrase.
I think it is too, actually.
It tells you everything, doesn't it? I mean, the metaphor breaks down after that, because once you've gone and you've got this writing in the world, where the metaphor definitely breaks down is you then start moving the bits around and making it into the next version of
You have to
itself.
clean it up a little bit.
Well, actually, maybe it does work as a metaphor, but yeah, that's what you do. But the other reason that I'll just say about vomit draft that is great is that with writing, it's so easy for it to fall to the bottom of your to-do list, that things you do for other people or things that you know what you're getting out of it tend to come in first on the to-do list, and this is what falls to the back, and the result of that is the thing that only you in all of time and space could ever have created is less likely to get created because the time isn't going into it. So that really is something that we talk about. And what the vomit draft compares that with is, if you need to vomit, you don't think, now, where on my calendar could I possibly put this? Where would it be most convenient to everyone else if I vomited? That's not how vomit works. So actually, I think psychologically it's quite a good thing to think about your writing is, today I am going to vomit 1 page or 5 pages.
Yeah, I think I need to vomit later.
See, that's the message people take from me.
But it's a good one, though, because I think that's so true. It's just that kind of sit down and actually do it. You know, I have been talking about getting back to playing guitar and playing piano and writing songs and doing all these things. And I've been talking about it for like 10 years. And I'm like, this is the year. And my friends are like, so you need to do it this year. And I'm like,
Can I
next year.
can I grab onto that? Because with the
Yeah.
Writers' Gym, that's exactly what we do. So a week, a usual week in the Writers' Gym includes Monday morning is the writing room, and that is a silent Zoom room where you can turn up for 5 minutes or you can do the full 2 hours, and it's creative co-working. You can see everybody else. The microphone is muted. We unmute at the end for a 10-minute chat, and sometimes we talk about writing and sometimes we don't. Sometimes we talk about other things entirely. But it means that at the very beginning of the week, whether you're a musician or a prose writer, and I've had people sewing in there, I've had people doing other things that they want to create, you know, it means that you're in touch with that at the beginning of the week, and you are more likely to carry it through when it's not something that gets pushed to luxury item at the end of the week. So that's how every week starts with the writing room. On Tuesdays we have coffee and creativity, which is an hour of writing, but either side is a chat, and people bring coaching questions, they bring questions about writing, but that time becomes sacred, so that you do
Right.
your music, you do your prose, you do your whatever it is you are doing. And it's not about finding an empty day, and it's not about finding the perfect time, and whether we're doing an actual workshop, an actual writing workout where I'm running a workshop, or whether it's a social, everything is reminding you this is part of who I am, and it always was and it always will be. And this is my job, is to get people to realize it's never going to be when the time comes. It's a little bit today, and that little bit today will add on to a little bit tomorrow. And no matter how many children, jobs, other things demand, need our energy, we
Yeah.
have more control than we think we do, and we can utilize it in our own ways. And I will always help individuals find what their individual ways are, and that's what the Writers' Gym is.
I absolutely love that. And I think that's such a valuable
Thank
tool
you.
for so many people. I know even for myself, because I mentioned I'm in the middle of writing a book, and it's about really navigating through trauma and building your best life after, right? And so it's been a really tough write. And so sometimes I'll have my time scheduled, and then I go, you know what? That kind of, it hurts a little bit to write this, and maybe I'm just gonna like step away from that for a minute, which I shouldn't be doing. I wanted to have the book done by the end of February, and it's not done. So I think when you have this scheduled time and a scheduled safe creative space that you can be in with a group of other like-minded people, it's really, really valuable. It's like you don't skip a doctor's appointment generally, right?
Mm.
So
Mm.
you have to consider it in the same sort of way. You have this appointment.
I think that's it, and particularly with that, it's the external reality. It's knowing that it's not just your time in your space and time box on your own in your house. It is very much a community. The other thing I would say about that, though, is that it's a very common thing for trauma response to be involved in this, and there is a story you want to tell, and I would put actual money on it's a story that you feel could help somebody else.
Yes.
And getting in touch with its purpose in the world. This is not just something I'm doing for me. This is not just, hey, look at me, because that's what holds people back. So many people
Mm-hmm.
feel like showing up is showing off, and it never was. But showing up for these people who can read it does mean coming out of your comfort zone in a very deep and quite scary way. This is why I trained in coaching.
Yeah.
It's not the same as psychotherapy, but that doesn't mean it can't be therapeutic. It doesn't replace those things, but what it does do is it allows you goals, it allows you support. I'm always very clear with people that where there are things that are still unprocessed, that process needs to be processed, because we all need those things. But in terms of how you make it work for the book, there are always ways to do that. So when I'm seeing one-to-one clients, and that's another
Mm-hmm.
thing with the Writers Gym, is 30% off one-to-one coaching is one of the things that happens in there. So when I'm
Oh,
seeing
okay.
people individually, and also when I'm working with them on the 6-week courses, there's time privately to say, what is going on with you? What would you like to be going on with you? What does success look like for you and for this? And how can we together make a plan to make that happen? That's what we do. So you're not alone in your head or in the book. You've got somebody
Yeah.
who is there and carrying you when you need it and walking next to you when you want it.
And it's, again, it's just such a huge
Mm.
asset for people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even
Yeah.
just, even if it's not trauma related, just
Mm.
to get
But the thing
things
is,
done and be supportive
is
along it,
anything
right?
not at some level when it's literal, when it is
True.
literal medical trauma, yes, but also a lot of our lives, a lot of the stresses, a lot of the politics of human interaction, it's why we read fiction, it's why we read memoir as well. So there's always a little of that, there's always some processing to do, and that can be hard, and that's okay. Because
Yeah.
it's hard, there's something in there that on the other side of it is going to be worth it, and not just to you but to all these people who you might never meet. And like, if you
Yeah.
imagine, like, you and I met through Vinted and through Facebook,
Yeah.
and just like that, where oh, there's a person who might be a bit like me and likes things I do. If you multiply that by a readership, think how many people, something that you create, something that you put into the world, the energy of who you are, imagine that. And it's worth stepping into. It's always worth stepping into, and above all, it's worth reaching out for the help that gets you there, because that's the hard bit for a lot of us, is reaching out for the help that is going to get you there, and knowing you are worthy of it and you have the right to take it.
It's true. Okay, don't make me cry.
Oh,
Not on this podcast.
I actually, and this is not to say that you have to, or that you should, or, because I don't believe in those shoulds, they're silly. Should fairies can all fly right away, but there is a phrase, and I forget whose it is, and maybe we can put it in the show notes because I can't remember whose it is right now. But
Yeah.
no tears in the writer, no tears in the reader. And hello to the dog. Oh,
I do apologize for
oh,
that.
don't! I'm always happy when there are furry animals. It's a
Oh
good
yeah.
thing.
But you know what? That's it. This is real live happening.
Exactly. Yeah, no, definitely. I'm always happy when there are those. That's something else that happens in the writing room, incidentally. There's definitely a high cat and dog quota in our lives, which I do enjoy.
And he can be quite vocal, so he'll probably show up in many
He's
episodes in
helping.
the future. He is.
Yeah.
He is.
Yeah.
He's like, Mom, input. This
Yeah.
is my input.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, fluffy dog.
Aw.
So I guess we can talk a little bit about like using writing as a wellness tool. I know
Yes.
that's actually one of the sections in my book is even just about journaling because
Mm.
like you, I have been writing since I could write,
Mm.
and I actually dreamed of being a poet and a songwriter. That's really been like my entire life's ultimate dream goal.
Mm.
But I'm doing a little bit different, but now I'm kind of rerouting back into that sort of general direction. But
Mm.
it's it's something that for me it feels like it's always been there my entire life. And when you have light days and when you have dark days, you can turn to writing. And for me, that's been always the best way for release and expressing myself. And what do you think about that? Do you see a
Oh,
lot of people using it
yes.
as like a wellness tool, as
Yes.
therapeutic? And like I say, this book, I'm about halfway through writing it, but holy cats, there's been a lot of healing, a lot of tears, a lot of growth just from
Mm.
writing it. And I think that's also why it's taking me a little bit of time, because there's been a lot to process too. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so it absolutely is something that I I see the benefits of every day. And in the text group we use, the Vox Rap and the Writers Gym group, so they all see me individually, but we also have one group together. And there is not an exercise that goes by where somebody doesn't find that the confidence and the sense of the ground beneath your feet in terms of your identity of who you are that you get through allowing yourself to create something, the confidence that comes from not going, oh, what does everybody else think, but ooh, curiosity, I wonder what's around the next corner. It's very meditative. It never stops amazing me, even though I know it's normal now, even though it's something I know is going to happen. Never stops amazing me how if I let myself go into this thing for a few minutes, maybe set an alarm so that I'm calm and I know I won't miss the next thing, but do a few minutes. It's amazing how much a better, truer, more grounded version of yourself comes back for picking up the kids, seeing this client, doing this, doing that. People come back more themselves than they went in. It's like you go in and you find some more of yourself and you bring it out. So what I'll do, if this is okay, is can I
yeah,
share with you the first draft commandments from your creative writing toolkit, because
yeah,
the way it works in terms of how you work with your emotions and how you bring that into every day, it's got aspects on how you make the time in the first place and find the time and stop thinking we find the time and knowing we create the time. But what I'll do is I will just hold this up to the camera. This is your creative writing toolkit, and that came out during lockdown as well. lockdown
cool. And
lockdown
we'll
was
put
quite the time.
links. You can
Yeah.
buy it online.
Oh, you absolutely can.
Good.
And
We'll
you can
put
get,
links for it in the show notes and everything.
absolutely. Can you imagine a painter who thought they had to perfect the top left-hand corner of a canvas before moving on to any of the rest of it? Or a sculptor who had to get the little toe right before shaping out the rest of the figure? Wouldn't happen, would it? Yet as writers, we often try to do exactly the same thing, getting the first line or chapter right and trying to edit it in our head before pouring that first draft onto the page. So here are the first draft commandments. There's 5 of them. This is what helps you get whatever your thing is, whatever the thing in your head in here is what gets it into the world. 1. Thou shalt not edit or criticize thyself. I didn't invent the phrase vomit draft, but I wish I had. Okay, the metaphor breaks down after you've vomited your draft onto the page. You will have to later sort it out and develop it. Do not try this at home with real vomit. This is when and how you really get to meet your ideas. You can't edit what you haven't written. I now talk about this in my catchphrases, think on the page.
Right.
Number 2, a writing prompt is a diving board, not a dive. Writing from prompts doesn't just happen at the workshop table. Any stimulus, from an overheard line of dialogue in the cafe to a person you see on the street, a view from the window, will give you ideas that tap into other ideas or questions already in your mind. If an idea in response to a prompt seems too obvious, don't be fooled. It doesn't mean you're being unoriginal. That's what inspiration feels like. It feels like, oh, yes, obviously, and you get it onto the page. Number 3, and this is huge. Aim to be interested, not interesting. New writers often feel overwhelmed or nervous about whether what they're writing is interesting or good. The
Right.
truth is, when it arrives on the page, that's not a fair question. Whether you're the most experienced author in the world or have never written before or are anywhere in between, the important thing is to focus on what makes you feel curious or excited and let yourself explore that. Don't worry about the audience yet. They'll be invited after a few rehearsals, but the first draft stage is for you. They'll enjoy it all the more later if you invest in the first draft now. 4, there is no wrong answer. This is especially true when you're writing from a prompt, but actually it's true all the time. Writing your first draft as freely as you can without worrying about whether you're doing it right is vital to find the story you want to tell and the voice in which you tell it. 5, and final, there may be 7 basic plots, or 3 or 12, depending on what you read, but there are infinite original voices. Your unique mix of memory, imagination, and experience has never occurred before and will never occur again. The experience of writer's block is not about not having any ideas, it's about being overwhelmed by how many choices you could make and not knowing where to start. Prompts help you pick a door, pick a lane. Then you just need to trust that whichever door you take, whichever lane you take, if you write with genuine curiosity and interest, you'll stay on the path that's right for you. That's them.
Yeah. I'm Yep. That's amazing. And so
Thank you.
what else is in your book there overall?
Right, so this one covers what was designed to be a 6-week course, and it's one that
Okay.
I do online every year. Haven't released dates for this year yet, but watch this space because I will do. And if anybody on my mailing list, they'll find out as soon as it happens. But it divides the intrinsic skills, not just of creative writing, but of writing, of creativity, of being at home in your voice into 6 weeks, and it takes you through dialogue description, point of view, structure, plot, but it also takes you through the emotions behind the blocks so that it gives you a guide to your own brain and working with yourself, not against yourself. There's another course I run called Focus and Flow, which is all about creativity and finding that and making the time, because creative confidence is the life skill. I used to talk about writing and speaking as the world's most transferable life skills, and of course they are. But to do that authentically, what I'm doing now as I talk to you, the reason it works for me is I feel very at home in what I'm saying, and I have absolute faith that my job is to communicate it as clearly as I can. It's not about the messenger, it's about the message. And that's what creative confidence can do for you.
And so, we talk a little, well, we were previously talking a little bit about finding your authentic voice before we hit record here.
Mm.
And so what does that look like for people, generally
Mm.
speaking? I think some people, kind of like you're talking about the first draft and things like that, being excited about it in yourself before making sure it's exciting for other people.
Mm.
um, I think people do that too when they're trying to find their authentic voice. It doesn't quite sound like them because they're looking to please outwardly before pleasing themselves. Is that right?
I think you've just modelled exactly what the process is, which is when you start to listen to your own thoughts and feelings, you tend to find the answer that is right for you. Because that started as a question, but it became not bringing the audience in too soon, not thinking, not mind reading the people out there, but channeling your own curiosity. So when I was talking in the first draft commandments about being interested, not interesting, that feeling of, oh, I wonder what's around the next corner. If
Hmm.
you're telling the story to yourself, as Terry Pratchett put it, the first draft is just me telling myself the story, then you know what it is. You're going to find something that is unique in all of time and space, because the artist's palette that you as an individual have of memory, imagination, observations, questions about the world, that combination hasn't occurred before, isn't going to occur again. Your job is to go there and find that. And I can promise you that the decades I lost to trying to please my version of what I thought other people wanted are extensive. And the things that changed in my life were partly me engaging with all the processes that had always been available for me to take that help and do that. But also, it was about being clear about my objectives, that in the end, what I really want is I want to explore these stories, because I believe stories are how we connect, how we understand ourselves, how we understand the world. And that for me was very, very important. So my voice, and I don't think most of us, probably all of us, have one writing voice, but I think
Mm.
there is something that is intrinsic in all of the different styles and characters I've been. So what I could do, I could talk about actually with Twisted Branches. So this was my second collection. This came out October of last year.
Okay.
And this is a story cycle. So it's a collection of short stories, but as you go through it, through 5 generations of one family in one family house, you see how they all have a different version of each other, and you see how the people who are the villain in each other's stories have their own version of it. So it's a jigsaw puzzle over 5 generations in one house. And for me, this was a beautiful way of exploring what your unique voice is, because I was completely different people of completely different ages, genders, experiences, values, ethics, but you have to find a little piece of yourself in all of those.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it is about the curiosity. I don't think it would be helpful to distill what is a unique voice or what is an authentic voice into a what it is, because by definition, that's coming from me. I'm not you. I'm not this person. I'm not that person. But what I do know is how to work with myself so that I have space to listen to it. Listen is probably the word I would use. There is a necklace that I would wear if it hadn't broken, because I'm wearing the Hebrew word for life at the moment, this chai, but I would be wearing hineni, which means here I am, or I am here. And it is very meditative, and it is very much, we're not always going to be here. We are here right now. Being able to listen rather than project yourself and panic and try to be terribly efficient or terribly clever, listening to the world. That's what transcendental meditation does. That's what being lifted somewhere else does. It's actually not somewhere else at all. It's bringing it into yourself. So that's something that I would say is find what what space and time you want and need to dedicate, and notice when your mind says, oh, I can't possibly do this. I have to go and do the washing. I have to go and phone this person. I have to go. Because those things will always be true. It's not that this makes them go away. It's just that when you give yourself that 10 minutes or 20 minutes or hour or 5 minutes or 10 seconds, you come back with more of yourself than you went in. So spending time in your own mind allows you to ask those questions. So what I do is I transcribe, I listen to what is in my head, and I write it down without criticizing it, so I can see it on the page, and then I can start editing and rewriting, because that's where you really find the story and the voice, is when you rewrite. But
Right.
you cannot rewrite and edit what you haven't written. So it's a case of trust, it's a case of faith in the universe and yourself, and of moving quite slowly and being as present as you can, and it will happen. It'll happen much faster than if you go, I can't possibly do this now, I'm too busy, I need an empty day, and you make it dependent on other issues. I make my progress dependent on myself, and I know that I'm investing in other people by doing that, because I don't know about you, Ashley, I'm a nicer person when I've written than when I haven't. I'm a
Yeah.
calmer person to have in the room. I'm a better lecturer, I'm a better coach, I'm a better writer, but I'm also a better partner, friend, everything else.
Yeah. No, I agree with that, and I am the same. I think a lot of it, the thread seems to be slow down
Mm.
and be mindful and have intention with what you're doing.
I think it is intention. When I was directing for theatre, and I think this is probably up to a point true of music as well, instead of slow down, it was a case of give everything its own time. It wasn't slow
Yes.
down deliberately. It was a voice coach I used to work with would talk about everything having its own taste. Every word has its own taste. And if they go through too fast and all together, you don't have time for the audience to experience all of those tastes. So it's a way of helping yourself. And when I'm coaching public speaking, I say that as well. You know, if you lose who you're talking to, you've stopped talking to, you're now talking at, and you are more likely
Right.
to speed. It's all connection in the end. It's communication and performance in that order.
That's really interesting, and that's so true. And so, I mean, even those public speaking, if you're coaching on that, can
Mm.
you apply that into your writing as well then?
Yes, absolutely. I think everything is objective driven for a start. What does a character want? Now, when you're public speaking, you are that character.
Yeah.
What's my objective? What do I want the audience to feel? What do I want the audience to do? And it becomes about talking very specifically to them. So I teach Lambda exams to under 18s, and one of the great things about the public speaking exams there is that they get you to identify who your imagined audience is, so that you're talking very specifically to. It's not just about, it's to.
Right.
It's always a relationship, and that's a really important but also beautiful thing, is that it is all about connecting in the end. And I can tell you when this happened to me, when I worked out all of that. I just finished my creative writing MA, so this was 2007 ish, and because I grew up in theatre, I was teaching drama lunch clubs in schools. And at this point, I was in my early 20s, and to be honest, as I walked into this primary school assembly, felt a lot more similar to the little people sitting completely passive faced on the floor staring at you than I did to all the teacher adulty people around the outside. And I was very nervous. And the head teacher introduced me as being the person who's going to do the drama club. And even as I walked on stage, I was thinking, because you know how when children watch you, they do it with absolute passive faces, as with people watching TV, because, you know, you're an adult, you're just TV, you're something else at this point. And, you know, I got on that stage, and the thought that went through my head was, just because that's how I'm feeling in here doesn't mean it needs to be the reality that I pick for out here. I have a choice. And I looked at every single one of those children, and I looked them in the eye, this whole primary school assembly, and I said, put your hand up if you know what drama is. And I was looking at them and I was talking to them, and every single hand is going, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, brilliant. Okay. And then listened to lots of answers, connected, communicated. All an audience wants from you is your own humanity.
Yeah.
The way we stand in our own way is we think that the audience is going, right, go on, impress me, be an expert, when we're feeling like, who am I? Why am I doing this? And actually, all they want from you is the reassurance of that. So the thing that I teach in public speaking and the thing that I coach in public speaking for adults, welcome them to your space. You might see them as the exam, they're not. They're seeing you as the person with authority. You have the power to make their day better. Welcome them.
Yeah. That's so true. And I think it comes back again. It's like, I think recurring themes in my life, in everything, are that perspective and connection, right? And I think what people don't always consciously realize too is that this applies to all areas of life, right? It applies in your workspace or in your on your social media posts. It applies to with your coworkers or your friends or your partners. It's kind of it is about that connection, and it is about feeling confident in yourself. And does that make sense? Do you know what I'm saying?
It absolutely does. That when you see that all you need to be is a vulnerable human being,
Yeah.
that allows you to be present as a human being. I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to have all the answers, but it's helpful if I am objective driven. How can I help? How can I be of service? How can I write this truthfully? How can I show up truthfully? And that does make you start to enjoy communicating more, because you're no longer working with an an inappropriately omniscient view of what your job is. We're not going to get it right
Yeah.
every time. We're not God. You
No,
know,
exactly. And
God being a story we told ourselves in order to worship, in order to sort of see something outside ourselves that wasn't just ourselves. That was the
Mhm.
purpose all along.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's true. I want to know, do you
Mm,
have any tips for people who want to turn professional? From taking it from a hobby to going pro.
absolutely. I do an exercise when I'm coaching freelancers in writing or just in freelance life generally. One of the exercises I do, I call a map of me, and all you need is a piece of paper. So if you're listening or watching this right now, pause me and grab a piece of paper. And when you have done that, that was your pausing opportunity. All you need to do is write your name at the center in a circle and then give it a bunch of legs. I used to call these spider diagrams until a 7-year-old got very upset because a spider has to have exactly 8 legs. So it's not a spider diagram if it has a different number to 8. So I'm going to say mind map in honor of that. But you can have as many legs as you want. And at the end of all of those legs, just throw down every interest you have. So let's say, actually, things I know that you and I both like.
Okay.
Music. You might go
Yeah.
music and then you might go this band, that band, this singer, this artist off of that.
Yeah.
On another leg, you might also go, I know there's brands that we both like that we've met through and that I found identity through that expressed something in me. So I might put those clothing brands that I know you know as well.
Yeah.
And it can be writing for me, coaching for me, it can be Terry Pratchett, Maggie O'Farrell, Leanne Moriarty, all the people that make you inspire you, domestic noir, anything. But throw it all down. It could be gardening, it could be car maintenance, it could be things that I wouldn't even know to suggest and think of. And just do that for 5 minutes, and you'll have this massive, great map that goes everywhere. Nothing is irrelevant. Everything is potentially relevant. Throw it all down, however random and strange you think it is. And when you have that picture, take another colour. It doesn't have to be another colour, but I find it's quite nice if it is. And without knowing even why, just circle 3. Just pick 3
Yeah.
and circle them. And then we go to our old friend Google and we add the word journal or magazine at the end of those 3. And it is amazing how many things you can pitch as a freelancer that you might not have thought of. So you'll find these magazines exist, and maybe you'll buy an issue and you'll read it and you'll think, you know what, I actually really like this style, or I can see what I do with this. And then I do my confidence building exercise for freelancers, which is, let's say, what if you knew? What if you knew one of my 3, I'm going to say this again. What if I knew one of my 3 ideas for a feature was going to get picked up by them? What would I pitch? And then it stops being, oh, am I a real writer? Because no one thinks they're a real writer. Oh, am I doing what they want? Or will this sound, should I put more clever words in it? And all of that nonsense that we get in our own way with, and go, what would I enjoy writing? What do I think could be here? And I've had myself surprised by that over the years, where you
Yeah.
think, oh, I don't know. And then you do something, and actually, who knew it? You do, and they want to pay you for it. So that's a really good way of doing it. So one way is the map of me. Another way is to do the same thing, but with connections. So another map of me, but with people. Nothing is irrelevant. I mean, look how we met. We met
Yeah.
through liking clothing brands on Vinted, and then in one of those on Facebook. So we are proof that this works.
Yeah.
Show your network on a piece of paper, and then their network, and then their network, and it's amazing how many contacts you might have that you wouldn't count as contacts, and sometimes all it takes is reaching out. The person that changed my life was an editor called Linda E. Rucker, who selected me for an anthology she was doing. She met me when I felt like I wasn't getting anywhere, and she showed me that, unlike some of the very much smaller, more inward-looking communities I've been in the past, the horror writers community was all about inviting you in and looking for new voices and being friendly to new people. And there was no competition. There was just celebration that we were all writers and we all had a voice. And it was exactly what I needed at the time, because I've been around people who were not like that at all, who and it was wonderful, and it showed me that that was possible. So she helped me artistically, but she also helped me emotionally. My job now is to be that person every day of my life, is to let people know we decide what the world can be like. We are the change we want to see if we choose to be. And it has worked professionally, but it's also worked personally.
I love that. Do you find there's a lot of gatekeeping in the writing world? Because we see it, I mean, you see it in everything, right? I was just talking to somebody about this for different artist fandoms, for example, and, they make it an exclusive club and you can't really be part of it, but all sorts of things though people gatekeep in the corporate world or wherever. Does it happen sometimes with authors then in the writing world?
I think up to a point, and this is as somebody who lived above Uxbridge Road when the Ealing riots happened in 2012, sometimes there's a good reason to keep gates.
Yeah.
As in, if anything could be published without being proofread, without being edited properly, that would put the industry in a worse situation. Depending on what you're trying to do, my experience is it's not really a question of gatekeeping, it's a question of turn up for the interview. Because
Right.
yes, anybody could self-publish tomorrow, but the
Yeah.
people who want, and there's good ways of self-publishing, there absolutely are. However, if what I want from my life is to be the best writer I can, to be the best version of myself and my book that I can
Yeah.
be, then I've got choices. I can get it out fast and just be happy to see my name in print. Or I can do what happened to me, is that an independent publisher who had published a couple of my stories in anthologies said, do you want to do a collection? I said, yes, I do, please. And then I did another collection, and I worked with him, and he worked with me because we'd already worked with each other a little bit and found
Cool.
this works. We'd like some more of this, thank you. And that's Steve Shaw, who runs Black Shuck Books. There's little Black Shuck Books there.
Oh, cool.
And independent publishing, there's a lot out there. It's all about doing your research. It's all about Googling and thinking, who do I actually want to work with? Who do I feel like my voice would belong in a stable with?
Right.
Where is my home, and I need to apply for it. So independent publishing is one way. What I'm now doing with my year is I've gone back to the novel that I was writing before I met Steve, did these, thought, ooh, shiny, and ran off in that direction. I was working on a novel. I've kind of come back to that now. And what I want to do with that is I want to take my time to make it as itself as it can be,
Yeah.
so that I then choose the agents that I'm going to apply to. I make myself very vulnerable by not just going, oh, I'll do what I've done before, I'll keep publishing independently. I think this belongs in a different stable to what these ones were. I'm going
Right.
to start applying for that. So it's a question of, as with making your CV look good, as with showing up to the interview, what is my objective? I think in a way everything I'll say to you about anything comes back to, what do I really want? And if it's, do I want my writing to be as strong as it can be, then it's probably less about the gatekeeping and more about the research into what is the right gate and
And
who.
finding your tribe, right?
Exactly, finding your tribe. Absolutely. So the podcast that I run, the Writers Gym podcast, for the second series, which launched yesterday,
Yeah.
I have a new producer and a new co-presenter there. So I'm co-presenting with Emily Inkpen, who is a global top 3% audio dramatist, and she's the creative director of Alternative Stories. And I met her through Chris, the producer, who's producing one of my scripts this year. And it's not so much gatekeeping as you say, it's tribal. It's finding your people and where you can contribute and where you're in the right place, that you're not shaping the peg for the hole.
Right.
You're
Yeah.
finding where you belong and who you're reaching out to.
Yeah. No, and that's true, I think. And it is for everything. It just seems to be becoming more and more apparent about that need to find the right people to keep around you in whatever
Yeah,
area of life it is, right?
absolutely. And the more you know about your own true objectives, the more you can strip away the what does this say about me and get to the what is it? Who am I? What do I want? That
Yeah.
truth. Give me some truth, as John Lennon said very loudly.
Yes. So I'm really curious
Mm.
about your creative space. How do you make the perfect space?
I don't believe in perfect. I believe another word for perfect will always be procrastination. But
Well, perfect for you, right? I
perfect
don't
for me.
know.
I don't.
It's good
What
enough, the
yeah.
right
What
space.
what gets me out of me? Before I started the Writers' Gym years before, I used to do what I call laptop racing, where you'd be in a cafe with other people on laptops and you'd all be doing your own thing, but there was people there. I've recreated that for the writing room. You know, we all do it digitally now. There are a few in-person events as well, but I've got people all over the world. So I've got one in New Zealand, I've got one in America. So, you know, there's people everywhere. So digital is very much the main thing.
Yeah,
But we essentially have digital cafes. That's what coffee and creativity is.
yeah,
We do all of that. So that's definitely one of them. What I make sure that I do at least once a week is I take myself out of my space. I normally go to Olympic Studios, which is my local members club where I sometimes run workshops as well. Somewhere with coffee, somewhere with great music. You'd love Olympic Studios. It used to be a recording studio. It was where when you see Olympic Studios at the end of credits, that was them. The catchphrase was Abbey Road had the Beatles, we had everyone else, and that was them. But anyway, now it's a members club and cinema, and I'll go there. The music, as you can imagine, is fantastic. It's exactly what you and I might be listening to,
yeah,
and the coffee is fantastic. And I just take myself into a corner, and it's brilliant because if you overhear dialogue and happen to write it in your little quotes book, brilliant, because you know I'm a writer.
yeah,
It's going to happen. But you just get a bit of time on your own. And what I do is I like to print off the latest version of the thing I'm working on creatively for me, and I take that with me. And I do my purple edit. My purple edit is my thing. It's this pen.
yeah.
Love this pen. You print it off. You do that in purple. You make your changes that way. So that's very important to me. But also, and this was Virginia Woolf who popularized this, my main way of working at home is have a door you can shut. You know, she talked about a room of one's own, that you didn't need an entire house. You didn't need your life to be perfect and everything to be ready.
Yeah.
But and Stephen King also talked about this in a similar way. He'll shut the door for first drafts. You know, and it's
Interesting.
shutting the door. Even when I'm alone in the house, I shut the door because it
Oh,
tells my brain, it's a ritual, it tells my brain that. Another thing I use is candles. If I know that I'm gonna, you you need to babysit a candle. You can't
yeah.
leave an unattended candle because it's
No,
dangerous. So you have to stay with a candle. So that makes bum hit sofa, stay on sofa, not computer. Take it away from work, put the phone somewhere else, have a bit of time. Candle, sofa, notebook, pen. So those are some of mine.
interesting. I like. See, I've never done the door close
Mm.
thing because the dog,
Mm.
he kind of likes to be in and out.
Yeah.
But I like to have a space with lots of light. It doesn't really matter if it's like a dreary day, but if there's sunshine,
Mm.
I want to have the sun pouring in.
Lovely.
I've got a ton of candles here too, so it's funny
Mm.
that you mentioned that. I'm doing most of my stuff just typing right
Mm.
now, but when I'm doing more kind of like poetry and things like that,
Mm.
then I do have a separate room, and I'll
Yeah.
sit down there, turn on some records, and just right
Yeah.
away.
You
Um,
get into your zone, into your space.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I think also for me somewhere comfortable to sit, because if I feel like I have to readjust all the time,
Mm.
I can't do it. So
Yeah.
I've got a little sofa in there, so I'll sit on
Yeah.
that like a love seat.
You've reminded me of another one that I do that I hadn't thought about for a while. I used to have a beloved cat called Teddy. I can't have a cat now because my partner, who I live with, is allergic to cat fur, unfortunately. But my cat many years ago was Teddy, and he was fabulous. He was a black cat. He was my witch's familiar. And what he would do is one week, Teddy there was a sofa, there was an armchair in this flat, and a couple of other things. This week it was the sofa. Teddy was on the sofa. The sofa belonged to Teddy. That was Teddy's place.
Right.
Next week, the sofa is not interesting at all. He's now on the chair, and that's Teddy's place. And he would do that. He'd kind of emigrate from one place to another, and that would be him for a while, and then it would be somewhere else. And I find that works for me. And I always think of him when I do it, that if I'm too familiar in a place, I don't access the thoughts quite as well. So I go from one spot to another.
I think that's right, and even you going to the studio, I like to get out of the house sometimes. You just need that change of
Oh yeah,
scenery and
yeah.
change things up a little bit. We've
Mm.
got a record shop slash cafe nearby, and I love to just head down there and then maybe do a little browsing, but then
Yeah,
drink coffee, right?
yeah,
And it's nice because sometimes around here I'm too distracted. I can't get things done in
yeah.
time. But
Absolutely. Yeah,
and so it's nice because then I'm there with that purpose, and that's that.
yeah.
Just
And your
lock it in.
psychological landscape matches inside and out. That's nice. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So
Mm.
I guess the other thing I am really curious about is the self-care practices so that you don't burn out. I think sometimes people get this misconception that,
Mm.
if you at least with me, oh, you work from home,
Oh yeah, that must be
you never
easy.
get burned out.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
no you're
Mm.
fine all the time, but it can be quite a heavy burden too.
Yes.
So how do you work through that? What are your kind of self-care
Yeah.
practices? How do you keep
Um,
yourself on the straight and narrow, I guess?
how do I stay me
Yeah.
and not a sort of stretch version?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Say the Thing was the best editorial advice I was ever given in my life by Ariel Fisher at Fangoria, which is where when you're worrying too much and you're trying to be clever and helpful and interesting and you sort of talk around the thing rather than go, what's the thing? That was useful editorially, it's useful in writing, but my God, is it useful in self care? Know what you need, say what you need, instead of putting the energy into what does it say about me if, or am I being fair, etc., etc. First of all, say the thing, because otherwise what
Right.
happens is you start thinking the petrol is supposed to be a reward for the car journey, and that is not how it works. It's fuel so you can do your thing. So knowing that it's the best thing you can do for your child, it's the best thing you can do for your dog, it's the best thing you can do for your partner, it's the best thing you can do for everyone else who's going to have anything to do with you. Knowing that, reminding yourself of that, it starts in here. Anything you do out here starts in here. So knowing that first of all is the big thing. What I do is I give myself a commute. So yes, I work from home, but for half an hour in my schedule I haven't arrived yet. And sometimes often that is journaling. That if I journal, if I process what happened the day before and I process what needs to happen this day, oh my God, everything goes better and more efficient. And I do see that as a form of self care. And I do write
Yeah.
it in nice pens and I do that. And it doesn't take as long as it sounds like it takes, but it helps. And what I do with that commute in the morning, and then I put in a commute in the evening, or I give myself that commute at a different time. If evening isn't when it fits, I'll give it to
Right.
myself another time. And it's not perfect. I don't do it every day. I like it when it happens because it allows me to be more present. Because I don't know if you've had this or if people you know have had this, but I know a few people who said, oh, yes, I used to read when I commuted every day, but now I don't have time. And actually,
Right.
they've got so much more time than they had when they did have time.
I think I talk about this a lot too
Mm.
in, for fitness or for healthy
Mm.
eating or
Yeah,
anything. We make time for what's important to us, and
yeah,
it's about making it a priority, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
maybe you're not scrolling, maybe you're reading instead of
yeah.
scrolling, you
Yes.
probably picked up more hours.
And suddenly you're sleeping more. And I mean, a technique that I use both to finish freelance writing pieces and to make myself have time off is I
Yeah.
imagine I'm being paid for it. if I got this
Right.
first draft, if somebody were paying me 500 quid to do the first draft of something I actually technically want to do anyway, then I'm going to get it done. So
Yeah.
that's what I imagine paying myself with. And I would do that for self-care. So when it's springy, it's not quite warm enough yet, but when it is, I'm going
Yeah.
to be on that balcony at least once a day, and only creative stuff gets taken out there, only creative stuff or reading. It's what Stephen Covey called sharpening the saw. That,
Okay.
do you know the sharpening the saw story?
I don't think I do.
Okay, I realise we've probably gone on a bit, but
No.
I will just give you the Stephen Covey sharpening
Yeah.
the saw. So you're walking in the forest and you see this guy, and he's got this saw and he is trying to chop the tree down, and the saw is completely blunt, and the man is sweating and sweating, and he's putting all of his energy into chopping the tree down. And you say to him, do you not maybe want to stop and sharpen the saw? He says, I can't stop and sharpen my saw. I've got no time. I've got a tree to cut down.
Yeah.
And there, but for the
But
grace of God, goes everybody.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's just it. When you take that care, then everything gets easier,
Yes.
right?
When you start to treat yourself like a real person, the
Yeah.
fictional people you create will be real people too. And so will everyone around you. You will be investing more in everyone else by investing more in yourself.
That's so true. There's so many great insights here. I really,
Thank you.
honestly, I really appreciate it because,
Mm.
again, it applies not just to creative works, but it applies to life.
Oh, we create our lives so much more than we realize we do. The trick is realizing.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I
Mm.
love that. So,
Hineni, that's why I'd normally be wearing the Hineni. Here I am, or I am here. Or as
yeah,
Yoko Ono had it, you are here.
that's fair. I do love Yoko, I'm not going to lie. But
Yes, I've got actually right behind me. Right behind me.
I've got that book too.
It's wonderful, isn't it?
Yes.
But the my absolute muse, although Paul McCartney was my first love, my absolute muse is David Bowie, because he never thought, or at least acted on, oh, I couldn't possibly change what I'm doing. What would people think?
Yeah, that's so true. He
So
just
many different things
went.
happened because he kept being different, and he predicted other different things as a result. And he's actually on the wall right in front of me every day, being a
Oh,
reminder that being oneself does not always mean the same thing, that change is authentic and change is inevitable and valuable.
yes,
And I don't stand in
absolutely.
my own light.
Yeah. I I mean, and I love how everybody develops and changes over times, and and that we can give up things
Mm,
that maybe old beliefs or old systems that have held us back in any way.
mm,
It's
absolutely.
important.
It is. And maybe a certain behaviour served us at one point and kept us safe at one point.
Yeah.
But as you'll know from conversations around trauma recovery, that behaviour might have served me once, but if
Not
something
anymore.
else serves me more, it's okay to step into that.
Yeah. And it's healing, and it creates so much beautiful life
Yeah,
going forward when you do.
absolutely. Absolutely.
So, if people want to find you and work with you, where can they do that?
Absolutely. I am on Instagram and Substack all of the time. It's Dr. Rachel Knightley. So it's DrRachelKnightley, Knightley with an E. And
Yeah,
I'm just going to drink more water.
that's fine.
So Instagram, very straightforward. It's me. Substack, it's Dr. Rachel Knightley at the Writers Gym.
Okay.
And Writers Gym membership is open to anybody who wants to increase their creative confidence for life as well as work and art. That is for everyone.
Yes,
That is absolutely for everyone who wants some more of that.
that's perfect. And we'll put all of
Oh,
the
and
links everywhere.
rachelknightley.com is where to
Your
find
website.
everything.
Okay, and they can
Yeah.
join your mailing list there.
And
And
subscribe to the Writers Gym
yeah,
podcast, which Series
yes,
2 launched yesterday. So find us on all of the platforms,
yes.
and subscribe to the Writers Gym, and you'll find me there.
That's perfect. And we'll put all the links in the notes below, so make sure you check that out wherever you're
Lovely.
listening. Thank
Thank
you
you.
again so much for being here, Rachel. It has been a delight to have you.
It has been a joy. Thank you.
And we hope that we can continue this conversation really soon.
Absolutely. I will see you on WhatsApp or in the world.
Yes, that sounds great. Thanks so much. We'll see
Thank
you
you.
soon.
Take
Bye.
care.
Thank you so much for joining us today on the Healthy Metal Hippie podcast. If you're looking for more, head to healthymetalhippie.com and let's connect. Until next time, wishing you a magical week. See you later.